Court Department 12 is now in session. Honorable Michelle Lever presiding.
Okay, good
Come to order,
morning.
be seated, please.
Does the state stipulate to the presence of the panel? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Draskovich?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you may call your next witness.
Thank you. The defense calls Mr. Robert Aguero.
Robert Aguero. Please step up into the witness stand. Remain standing. Raise your right hand. Face the clerk, please.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Robert Aguero, R-O-B-E-R-T-A-G-U-E-R-O.
Thank you. Mr. Aguero, how are you employed?
I own my own company, which is solely focused on cell phone forensics and cell tower data analysis.
If you could please tell us a little bit about your history in reference to this subject area.
I started this business about 15 years ago. I've received training from Cellebrite and certification from Cellebrite on extracting data, analyzing data from cell phone. I've also received training from SecureView. That's another manufacturer of different software. As far as the cell tower analysis, I've received training from GeoTime. That's the software that I use for mapping on the proper method for mapping data. I've received various trainings from different companies, all dealing with the mapping and analysis of cell phone data. And I attend yearly seminars to keep up with the latest changes in both technologies.
Prior to your owning DataPro, have you worked with law enforcement?
Yes, I spent 15 years in law enforcement. Half the time I worked in patrol, the other half I worked detectives, and then I retired after 15 years on a medical retirement.
Where are you currently residing?
I currently reside in the state of Washington.
Have you been called upon in other cases to give expert testimony concerning cell phone extraction?
Yes, I have.
You were contacted by the defense in the state of Nevada versus Robert Tellis, correct?
Yes.
And did you prepare a report as a result of your being contracted by the defense in this
Yes.
case? Did you prepare a PowerPoint in reference to your evaluation and analysis of data that was given to you?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, at this time we'd move for the admission by stipulation of Defense Exhibit A3.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Permission to publish. And this is, Clark County Superior Court, but I mean, it's state of Nevada, it's the court, this matter.
Yes.
Points of interest were 7216 Bronze Circle, correct?
Correct, yes.
9624 Spanish Steps.
Correct.
Planet Fitness located on West Charleston.
Correct, yes.
And a Planet Fitness located on 230 South Decatur.
Correct, yes.
The data that you analyzed concerned cell phone number 702-533-1858, correct?
Yes.
And how was it that you verified that the information that we're about to address is tied to this cell phone number?
Well, when you look at the call detail records or all the records that I analyze, they either have the phone number or they have the international mobile subscriber identity that identifies the subscriber. So those all matched to this number.
Turning your attention to page number 3, if you could explain to the jury what is this that we're looking at?
In this page, we're looking at the T-Mobile mediation report, which is referred to as a call detail records, and that is showing you the cell towers that are used for voice transactions. Now, the T-Mobile mediation report only covered August 1st, 2022 through August 16th, 2022. So when you see a blue dot that is the location of the cell tower. And then the shaded area would be the sector coverage. And again, the shaded area is only a visual aid to help you see the area. It is not an actual propagation map, so it's just a visual aid.
If you could explain what a propagation map is.
A radio frequency propagation map is when you're interested in a specific tower and a specific antenna, and you want to find out what the coverage is. You can either request it from the phone company or take specialized equipment, go out to the area, and you measure the radio frequencies from the tower. And then you can actually draw a map that shows the actual coverage of a specific sector.
I'll get a little bit ahead of ourselves. There came a point in time where you were asked to review pen register records, correct?
Yes.
And that would have been records beginning at or about August 7th, 2022?
Yes.
But at this point in time, just to give reference, you didn't review any pen register records, and I'll tell you they didn't exist from August 1st, 2022 to August 16th, 2022.
Yes, at this point on this map, the only item we're looking at is the T-Mobile mediation report, which again, that just details voice transactions that are made by the phone.
In reference to this X right here, bronze circle, you don't have any communication or any pings, basically would be the word, with any cell phone towers close to that.
That's correct. Between August 1st and August 16th, there were no towers used that were near the bronze circle location.
However, we do have pings, or we have communication with cell towers in the area of 9624 Spanish Steps Lane, Las Vegas,
Yes.
as well as two Planet Fitness locations. Fair to say?
Correct, yes.
One is Planet Fitness is 8945 West Charleston Boulevard.
Yes.
We have some that are right next to that, correct?
Yes, we do.
And that would indicate that the cell phone tower would be in proximity to that address.
Yeah, that tells us that that address is within coverage of this tower, so that's definitely one address where the phone could be at. Now, this data is not specific enough to pinpoint a specific location for you, just a general area.
Just the general area. Same question as to this other Planet Fitness, the address being 230 South Decatur Boulevard in Las Vegas. We do have pings near that area as well.
Correct, yes.
And again, you can't say that that means that person is specifically there, but it's a cell phone tower that's in proximity to that address.
Correct, yes.
And just so we're clear too, when you have these pings or this communication between a cell phone device and a tower, there may be various towers that are communicating or exchanging data, phone calls, text. It will show that there's activation or communication, but they don't always necessarily speak with the closest or communicate with the closest cell tower.
Correct. The cell phone will communicate with the tower that has the strongest, clearest signal. So the strongest, clearest signal can be one that's close by, but quite often if you're in a busy area or if the network will level the usage out, so you could be next to one tower, but yet your phone will connect to another tower that's a little further away. Again, it goes to the cleanest, clearest signal for connections.
If I could turn your attention to page 4. If you could please explain to us the significance of this analysis.
This is the same data we saw on the previous page. I just zoomed in so we can better see the various addresses that we've been talking about. But it's the exact same data that we saw before it was zoomed out. Now we're just zoomed into a smaller area.
You know, in this case, in the lower portion of the exhibit, it appears that we have these fanning out images. If you could
Yes.
explain to us what those are and what those signify in this exhibit.
Again, when you see the blue dot, that's the location of the cell tower. When you see a little pie wedge going out, that represents a sector. Typically, most towers have a tower is just basically a tall structure or a building, and then on top you'll see a bunch of antennas all around it. The way that the carriers lay out the network, they divide them into sectors, which is if you take a full circle around a tower, you divide it into 3 equal shapes, 3 pie wedges. Each one of those would be a sector. On some of them, you may see like a full circle going all around. That's because either a sector was not provided for us, the orientation of the sector, or it could be an omnidirectional antenna. So when you don't see a sector, it means it could be anywhere around the tower. When you see the pie wedges, then the phone is somewhere where the blue shading is located. And again, these are just visual aids. They don't represent the actual coverage for each sector.
And again, turning your attention to the two Planet Fitness locations, again, we have cell phone towers that were communicating in the area of this subject telephone number.
Yes.
This cell phone device.
Yes.
Turning your attention to slide number 5. Again, if you could explain to us the significance of this slide and your findings.
Yes, I was asked about the two Planet Fitness and when were the towers near connected. And then we see the one on the right-hand side of the map that was connected on August 9th, 2022. And then we have the time and the incoming or outgoing. It just denotes whether there's an incoming call or outgoing call. On the left side of the other Planet Fitness, there's two towers that were in close proximity. So I put a blue circle highlighting the two towers, and then those are all the dates shown there that the phone connected to those two towers.
And when a phone connects to a tower, if you could explain to us the various ways in which it does connect to the tower.
Well, typically a phone is a high-priced walkie-talkie, for lack of a better term. So when you hit send on your phone, it uses radio frequencies and sends a signal to the tower with the clearest, strongest signal. The tower will connect to the phone. You get authenticated as a phone user with that carrier, and then your call gets routed to whoever you're calling. And as long as you're connected, then there'll be two-way communication. Now, the records we have in this pages, they will show typically the starting cell tower. That's what I'm mapping out here. So if you spend 10 minutes on a phone call, we have the starting tower. If you're moving around, you could hit other towers. However, they're not recorded in the records we have. So we're only being shown the tower that the initial connection made to the phone.
Turning your attention to slide 6, the pen register. Obviously, you were provided with information obtained from law enforcement concerning a pen register, correct?
Yes.
Could you explain just briefly what a pen register is?
Basically, that's when law enforcement gets a court order, goes to the phone company, and then they track all the calls that are made and text message, data usage by that phone during a specific time frame. And then what we're provided is a spreadsheet with the date, time, and cell towers that were connected.
Turning your attention to slide page number 7, if you could explain to us the significance and what your analysis was concerning this data that you were provided, specifically on August 28th, 2022.
For this page, I was asked to look at August 28th, 2022 for all of the connections shown on the pen register. And for that date, there was only 2 cell towers that were used. One is located to the northwest of the Spanish Steps location. And then on that tower, we have excuse me, a breakdown. There were data sessions that were recorded between 12:39 a.m. all the way down to 11:35 p.m. There was 2 voice calls that were made, and the times are listed there. And there was 1 text message at 1:50 p.m. that connected with that tower. The other tower that was used is to the southeast of the Spanish Step location, and all of the connections to that tower were data sessions. There were no voice calls or text messages, so those are all data sessions, and these are the only 2 towers that were connected during that day.
So it's my understanding that based upon your testimony, this is all the phone usage based upon the records that were provided to you that had occurred on August 28th, 2022. Yes. We have the data sessions. We have, apparently there was 2 voice communications and 1 text message.
Correct.
And that was for the entire day of that day.
Yes.
If I told you that this was a Sunday, any reason to disagree with me?
No.
Is it fair to say that based upon your analysis of this cell phone data, it appears that the cell phone and presumably its user were at this address, 9624 Spanish Steps?
respect to the user.
Okay. Again, this data gives you the general area where the phone could be, so there's no way of knowing if it was located right at Spanish Steps, but that is a location where it could have been. It could also be anywhere in that general area. Again, the data is not precise enough to pinpoint a specific address.
You don't see any other cell phone communication with any cell phone towers outside of this area in these two cell phone towers, fair to say?
Correct, yes.
Turning your attention now to the pen register data that was provided to you concerning September 2nd, 2022. If you'd explain to us what we're looking at here on page 9 or slide 9 of your analysis.
Here we're looking at the pen register data for September 2nd, 2022. And again, all of the blue dots are cell towers that were used on that day for either voice, text, or data.
Again, we have cell phone towers in the area of 9624 Spanish Steps, correct?
Correct, yes.
And we also have the cell phone towers that are in the area of the Planet Fitness, being at 8945 West Charleston Boulevard.
That is correct, yes.
It appears that we have no cell phone or no data communication, either outgoing text, ingoing text, or data. You know, the automatic communication between the cell phone and the tower over at the Planet Fitness over on Decatur, correct?
Not on this date, no.
And nor do we have any cell phone towers that were activated or communicated with or pinged on the 7216 Bronze Circle address.
That is correct, yes.
Turning your attention to this slide, page 10, slide 10, if you could explain to us what we were looking at here.
What we're going to see in the next few pages is the date broken down in smaller segments. This first segment covers between 1:34 and 6:44 a.m., where the one tower northwest of the home is being utilized. And again, all of the data connections are for data sessions. There were no voice calls or text messages.
And just so we're clear when we're looking at this list, I mean, because we have a data session at 1:34:14 a.m., that doesn't mean the user of this phone is on the phone. That just means that the phone is communicating or exchanging data with the towers.
Yes, data sessions can be active usage or passive usage. Active usage is when you're going on Facebook, Instagram, searching the internet, doing something actively on the phone. And then you have passive usage where the phone will connect to the towers on its own in the background. That's just a normal part of the operation of how cell phones work. As long as it's turned on, it is constantly communicating with cell towers.
So a person could be sound asleep at 1:34 a.m., and obviously we have this data because that's what the cell phone is doing independently.
Correct, yes.
I could turn your attention to slide number 11. If you could discuss with us your findings in reference to this slide.
Here we're looking at the next time frame is from 6:45 to 6:50 a.m. and we see 4 different towers that are being utilized. The times are listed for each tower, and again, all of these are data sessions, so none of these are voice or text message.
So we don't have any active usage on the part of the person that presumably has the cell phone, if they do.
Correct. With data session, it can all be background. There's no way of knowing from these records whether it's active or background.
Slide page number 12, if you could explain to us your analysis concerning this information.
Here we go to the next time frame. This is between 7:09 a.m. and 3:47 p.m. And again, we have the same 2 towers that we've seen used before, one to the northwest and one to the southeast of the Spanish Steps location. The one to the northwest, on the left side, we see all of the data sessions. Again, those could be background or it could be active. And then there were several text message and 3 voice calls that utilized that tower. And then on the lower right tower, we have, again, a breakdown of 1 text message, 3 voice calls, and then the rest are all data sessions that connected with the tower on the lower right.
I could turn your attention to slide page 13. If you could please discuss with us what we're viewing here.
Here we're looking at the next time frame is from 4 p.m. to 4:20 p.m. During this time frame, again, we have 5 cell towers. The one at the lower part of the map is for a voice call, so we know that's something that the phone connected to the tower. The others are all data sessions, which they could be background data sessions or active data sessions.
Based upon your review of the cell tower cell phone communication based upon this pen register, is it fair to say that the person who had this phone was in the area of the Planet Fitness?
Sustained.
Does it appear that the cell phone was in proximity or in the area of the Planet Fitness?
Yes, that's definitely one of the locations where it could have been.
And that is consistent with the findings in your previous slides as well.
Yes.
Again, you had testified that it's not necessarily the closest cell tower that basically we have a ping, but it's the strongest.
Correct.
And that would be consistent, again, with what we see here. That this person was in, or that the cell phone was in the area of both the Spanish Steps home as well as the Planet Fitness on Charleston.
Yes, the tower on the lower right of the map, that one is, when I measured, is almost equal distance to the Spanish Steps and Planet Fitness. So either location could be a location where the phone was found or somewhere in between in that general area.
Here we have then much later in the day, again, we have, it appears, data sessions. If you could please just briefly explain this to us.
Yeah, here we're going through the end of the day from 4:27 p.m. to 11:55 p.m. and we have 3 different towers that are being utilized, and they're all for data sessions.
Again, we don't have active use. We're perhaps a user. We're having texts that are being sent, phone calls that are being made.
Correct. Yeah, this data that we have, that we're provided with, there's no way of knowing if anyone was actually using the phone or if it was just sitting there with background connections.
If you could explain to us on this next slide the Cellebrite locations and what the basis was for your analysis and what it is that we are viewing here.
Here I was provided a Cellebrite, which is a forensic software for extracting data from the phone. I was asked to look for any locations available for the year of 2022, and when I pulled the locations for 2022, this is what came up. Now in this case, the dot represents the
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short recess. During this recess, you're not to discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication or social media. Read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary. Do any research, consult dictionaries, internet, or reference materials. Do any investigation, test a theory, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own, or form expressing an opinion regarding the case until it's finally submitted to you will be in recess for 10 minutes.
Thank you. All rise for the next adjournment. Adjourned.
Here to the courtroom. It's in black and white.
If we could, back or something.
Session.
Is there something outside the presence?
There is, it has nothing to do with this witness, but it's another witness.
Okay. Sure. We're ready. You can make a count.
Return to the witness stand.
Oh, did we take this off? Let's see.
All rise for entering jury, please, sir.
Stipulate to the presence of the panel. Mr. Grasovich,
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated.
proceed.
Thank you. Sorry for the break, Mr. Aguero. We were discussing this slide, the 2022 media locations, and you were telling us what this was.
Yeah, this slide here is looking at the locations that were found on the cell phone when I reviewed the Cellebrite extraction report. All of the locations came from basically media, photos or videos that were stored on the phone. Typically, when you take a photograph, most modern phones will get the latitude, longitude, so it'll give you a location where the photo was taken. So this is just looking at all the media that was found on the phone. And there were the little orange dots is the actual latitude and longitude reported on the media. And again, there's basically 3 locations where they're all kind of bunched together. The bulk of them is in the upper left near the Spanish Steps Lane location, and that's in January. Had 124 pictures or videos taken at that location. There was one at the bottom of the page taken in September, and then there was one on the right taken in March. Again, this is just strictly from media locations, and the media could be some that the phone took itself, or it could be some that were sent via text message or downloaded from social media or some other online site, and that's basically what we're looking at.
Now, you had prepared a report just a couple of days ago and had sent it to the parties involved, correct?
Yes.
And that presentation was not in the PowerPoint presentation. It was basically slides, fair to say?
Correct, yes.
I'm going to show you defense proposed exhibits C3 and D3. I may approach the witness. If you could review these 2 documents and tell me if you recognize them.
Yes, I do.
We can move this down to the additional. Now, in reference to these 2, is there any correlation between these 2 exhibits and what we're seeing on the screen?
Yes. This first one, C3, it was looking at all of the locations found on the phone, and they range from 2009 all the way through 2022. There was quite a bit of location, so we have a lot more dots throughout the map.
And if I could publish, Your Honor? And if we could bring this up on the overhead. This is Defense Exhibit C3. If you could please explain to us again, this is just a much broader time frame.
Yes, it's, again, it's from 2009 through 2022, so there's several years worth of records and locations. And again, each of the dots represents 1 or more locations that were found at where the dot is.
Okay. Turning your attention to what's been marked and admitted, please. Yes, if you could explain to us this document.
Yes, this one, B3, is just looking at the time frame of August 1st through August 30, 2022 on the map, because there were no locations found on the phone for that month.
If I may publish this. And you say no locations, is this in reference to media locations?
Well, just any locations that are found on the phone. The first one that we looked at were all strictly media location. This last one from 2009 through 2022 were all the locations found. From memory, I don't recall if they're strictly media or if there's other forms of location. The form will keep a variety of locations in its memory.
Has there been any change in your evaluation of the data that was presented to you?
No.
There was a slide that we had addressed concerning, the September 2nd, 2022 data. I'm sorry, the September 2nd, 2022 data. Recall that line of questioning?
Yes.
Again, there's been no change in your testimony or opinions through the course of your evaluation of this data.
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, sir.
You know, I think I'm gonna use mine. It's okay.
Absolutely.
I'll just, if I can have a second just to set up your honor. Do you mind if I, Robert, can you clear your laptop?
No, absolutely.
That's awkward. Any issue, I just use the PowerPoint, the current PowerPoint that you sent me. Just to, so we don't have to toggle over. Absolutely. Thanks. Can we cue over? All right. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good. So, just to be clear, this is the PowerPoint presentation that you just presented the jury this morning. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. It would be accurate to say that this report, the one that we saw today, was produced on August 21st. That would be today at 10:21 a.m. Does that sound about right?
Well, actually, this report was created last night. I copied it to a thumb drive this morning to bring it over.
Okay. So last night you created it, but this morning at 10:21 a.m. you sent that out, correct?
Well, I brought it on a thumb drive and gave it to the attorney, and that's probably when he copied. I gave it to him a few minutes before that.
Okay, understood. And just to be clear, this was not the first report that you produced, correct?
No, it's not.
Okay, and I'm going to show opposing counsel. It's already in precinct marked as 373. May I approach the witness? Let the record reflect I'm showing the witness. Sir, I want you to take a look at station post 373. Take a quick minute, flip through it, and let me know if you recognize it.
Yes, it looks like the original PowerPoint or the original presentation that was prepared.
And that's a fair and accurate depiction of that original report. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
At this time, we ask that station post 373 be admitted into evidence.
No objection.
Thank you very much. Okay, sir. So let's do this. I want to pick up where he left off at the end. So when we look at the end of your presentation, and we get to slides 15 and 16. 15 says Cellebrite locations. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And then this one focuses on media locations. Is that correct?
Well, it focuses on all the locations from 2022 that were on the phone.
Well, it's specifying media locations.
They were all media locations.
Okay. And that is with respect to Mr. Tellis's phone that was forensically downloaded, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Now, if we could cue over to the Elmo. Thank you. So this is, as we can see here, that's marked as slide 14, correct? And it
Yes.
says Cellebrite locations, is that right?
Yes.
When we turn to this slide, you were providing us a range of history from 2009 to 2022. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And each one of those orange dots symbolizes location data being spit out by that phone that's contained on the forensic download of the phone. Would that be correct?
Correct, yes.
And just to be clear, when we look at this map, that's not all of Las Vegas. It's just a section of Las Vegas, correct?
Correct.
And it's the section of Las Vegas that contains the defendant's house. Is that right?
Yes.
I don't know if you know that or not, but at least it contains Spanish Steps. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Were you aware that's where the defendant lived?
I learned it in the last couple of days.
Okay. It includes an address of Bronze Circle, and you wouldn't have any reason to disagree with me that potentially is well, it's not potentially, it is the victim's home in this case.
I'll take your word.
All right. And it also includes, I believe, well, it doesn't have any Planet Fitness landmarks on this slide, correct?
Correct.
And so that is a 13-year snapshot of this section of the city regarding location data found on that phone.
Correct.
Let's talk about location data for a second on a phone. If you, for example, if you send a phone, if you take a picture on a phone, sometimes phones will actually capture where exactly you took that picture, correct?
Yes, most modern phones will capture the latitude, longitude, sometimes the altitude of where the photo was taken.
And so when phones are, for example, created on a phone and that's captured in Cellebrite, you can capture location data showing, oh, I can see where, that would be a plot point potentially, correct?
Correct.
But apps are a way that location data can be generated from a Cellebrite download, correct?
Well, apps can generate location and be stored on the phone, and then Cellebrite would download that app location.
So, for example, like Waze, the app Waze, right?
Correct.
It shows you which way to go. You can turn on your location services, and then if you had turned it on and your phone is downloaded, Cellebrite could collect what Waze following you, correct?
Correct.
Google Maps is the same way, correct?
Yes.
I mean, even like Chick-fil-A can follow. We'd like to know where you are. You can tell Chick-fil-A, hey, you can follow me anytime I'm walking around, correct?
There's a million apps that will follow people, yes.
So the owner of the phone has a lot of control over who's watching, where they're going with their phone, because they control turning on location information, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so all you're doing is trying to see what location information was left, right?
Correct.
And when we look at a 13-year snapshot of Mr. Tellis' phone, we get all those dots for that section, correct?
Yes.
This slide was not in the newest presentation, correct?
No, the newest presentation I was requested, since there is quite a bit of data, narrow it down to 2022, and that's what I did.
Understood. So the answer to my question was no. This slide was not in the new presentation, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right. So now let's turn to the original report. Let's go to slide 16. Sir, if you could, please read the header of the slide.
August 1 through 31st, 2022, no locations.
No locations. So if I'm understanding this slide correctly, you decided to look at how much location data is on Mr. Tellis' phone for the month of August of 2022, correct?
Correct.
Your map focuses on Bronze Circle as well as his house, correct?
Correct.
And there's not a single plot point, correct?
Correct.
When we look at the 13 years, there's tons of plot points, right?
Yes.
But the month of August, dead silent.
Correct.
Sir, an owner of the phone has the ability to turn off location information, correct?
That is correct. You can turn off location history at any point.
And you don't just have the power to turn off a particular app. You can literally just turn the phone off and then it goes dark, right?
If you turn the phone off, then it will not record anything.
So if you want to go to Bronze Circle, but you don't want someone to see you, you can simply just turn off the phone, right?
That is possible, yes.
You could go through every single one of your apps that have location information and you could turn those off as well if you wanted to leave your phone on, right?
That is correct.
The power is in the holder of the phone, correct?
Yes.
And this is Mr. Tellis' phone.
Yes.
And that month, and here's the thing, when you reviewed this case, do you know the day that Mr. Gehrman died?
I have no idea, sir.
Okay, so if I told you it was September 2nd, you have no reason to dispute that?
No, I don't. I don't know the date.
Okay. But just to be clear, the month before Mr. Gehrman dies, He's got no location data on his phone
That's correct.
for that area.
Correct.
So, I want to turn back to, can we cue over to his like modern presentation, the most recent one? Thank you. All right, so let's look at, sorry, I'm getting confused looking at this presentation thing here. All right, so the 702-533-1858. You reviewed the subscriber information on this, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and just to be clear, 702-533-1858, according to the T-Mobile records, the subscriber is Robert Tellis, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So when you looked at the cell phone records and the pen register, it was all affiliated with Mr. Tellis's cell phone, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When we look at this slide here, August 1st through August 16th, when we look at this information, again, these are just plot points of the phone interacting with a tower. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just to be clear, this does not deal with September 2nd. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And also, just to be clear, if I didn't want to interact with a tower, so when we look at historical records, isn't it true that when you see the tower data, that's because of if a phone called, let's say a phone called my phone, and I picked it up and I answered it, that connection using a cell tower pops up in the record, right?
That is correct, yes.
You would agree with me that if I turn my phone off, there's not going to be a plot point of where my phone is because my phone is not talking to a cell tower, correct?
No, if you turn your phone off, there would be a record of a call coming in, going to voicemail, and there would not be a cell tower.
Right. So when we look at if we look at August 1st through August 16th, and we see like bronze circle, there doesn't appear to be a tower that the phone is interacting, right?
Correct.
But let's just say if I turned off my phone and I went to bronze circle, it doesn't matter how many times someone calls me, it's never going to show up in the records, right?
Correct.
Because I controlled whether or not someone could see me through that tower information, right?
If you turn it off, there will be no record. Yes.
Right, because the holder of the phone controls the information, right? In terms of tower data, right?
Well,
Put it another way. If I don't want any tower records of my movement, all I have to do is hit the power button and turn it off, right?
yes, you can turn it off, and then there would be no record on any record from the phone company.
So all of the information that we get to this is tied to whether or not the holder of the phone wants to keep his phone on or off, correct?
These is showing all the times that the phone is on.
So
Period.
the answer to my question is what? It all depends on whether or not the holder of the phone wants to have his location data out there, right?
Well, it depends on whether the owner of the phone wants to have communications with the phone.
Correct. And if Mr. Tellis didn't want to have his communication out there, he could simply turn it off, and you wouldn't be able to see the movement of his phone as it interacts with towers because it can't, correct?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay, and just to be clear, during this month of August, at least for this 2-week period, there's no tower interaction near Brown Circle, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Again, similarly, we see this is the same logic, right? So you've got these pings, but it's dependent on the phone being on to communicate with those towers. Is that right?
Yes.
Moving on to slide 5. This is kind of a tower near Planet Fitness, correct? So this is on 8/5. So this is not the day of the murder, is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know the date of the
It's
murder.
9/2. So it's not 9/2, correct?
Correct.
So we're looking at we're looking in that 2-week window in August, right?
Correct.
Okay. We're looking at 8/28. That's not on 9/2, is it?
Correct.
Let's move on. Let's talk about 9/2. So on 9/2 here, you are indicating that there are data sessions from 1:30 in the morning to 6:44, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and it's interacting at a cell site tower kind of nearby Spanish Steps, right?
Correct.
So this is not incoming or outgoing, is that right?
It's strictly data sessions.
Right, and I think you said, the phone acts passively, right?
It can be active or it can be passive.
And so, like, people go to sleep and your phone could still be communicating with a tower through a data session. Would that be right?
Yes.
Okay. 6 a.m. to 6:45 to 6:50. Again, these are all data sessions, right?
Correct.
So no outgoing messages or voice calls from this phone, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now we're looking at, this is a very big window of time. You've got 7:09 a.m. to 3:47. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it looks like you're trying to parse out what things are. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just separating the pen register data from the voice, text, and data.
And just to be clear, one of the things I saw on an earlier slide that you don't have here is you don't denote on this slide which text, if the text messages are incoming or outgoing, correct?
That is correct.
And you don't denote if the voicemail message, the voice calls are incoming or outgoing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'd like to publish. You've read those pen registers. I'd like to publish Exhibit 345. Hold on. Let me bring this over. You're familiar with these records, correct?
Yes.
Oh wait, this is the wrong one. Hold on a second. Well, just so we can see this. This is the subscriber records, right?
Correct.
That's how we can see it's Mr. Tellis and it's over at Spanish Steps. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. So I'm now publishing the pen register records. This is what they look like, correct?
Correct.
And essentially, when we look at category A, that's kind of plotting an event, right? Or like an entry point, right? Is that correct?
Column A, I believe it's just like a case number.
Okay, thank you. Column B is the number, right?
Correct.
And that's Mr. Tellis' number, is that right?
Yes.
Column D is the date, is that true?
Correct.
And call type is whether it's a voice or a text or if it's a data session, right?
Correct.
And direction is outgoing and ingoing, correct?
Correct.
Incoming. So I just want to turn your attention to the end of these registers. And just so we're clear, when we were looking at your presentation before and you were mapping out the data sessions, the incoming, well, you didn't do incoming outcome, but you had text messages and voice, that was being pulled from these records that we see here, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Get to, oh, there's a glare and I can't see the scroll button, sorry. Let me. Okay. So, do you see this entry point here? For the record, it's 45556. Do you see that, sir?
Yes, sir.
And I think you're familiar with this. Isn't it true that this is the last, for the morning of September 2nd, this is the last outgoing text for a while. Would that be correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and it's outgoing and it's at 8:48, right?
Correct, yes.
And we look at that other slide, when we look at, so when we're looking at, there it is, right? That's up at the top, right? The very first entry, that's an outgoing text message, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So let's go back to these records. So when we start to look after 8:48, you're getting tons of outgoing data, which is kind of, as you testified to, a passive function of a phone, correct?
It can be, yes.
But then you start getting text messages, right? So here's one at 9:16, right?
Correct.
That's incoming though, right?
Correct.
There's another one at 9:16:03, another incoming text, correct?
Correct.
9:16:04, an incoming text, correct?
Yes,
9:26, another incoming text, correct?
correct.
And this phone is not responding. It's not sending an outgoing text yet. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
We have another incoming text at 9:44. Is that right?
Correct.
Another incoming text at 9:44. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
We have another one. So we've got 1, 2, 3, all within 9:44:53. Incoming text after incoming text, correct?
Yeah, just to clear up, when you have the same time frame, it typically is one large message that's broken down into smaller segments, so it's not necessarily multiple messages. Just so it's clear.
Understood. And so we see this bulk, there's one message coming at 9:44, but it's not responded to immediately, correct?
Correct, yes.
And then at 10:16, we have another text message, right?
Correct, incoming.
And then 1 second later, so the first one's at 10:16:29, the next one's at 10:16:30, another text message, right?
Again, they could be separate, it could be one long message broken down.
Okay, so we're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all being recorded by this phone, right?
Correct,
And there's no immediate response back, right?
correct.
Then we see at 10:35, nearly 15 minutes later, another text message comes in, or actually nearly 20 minutes later, another text message comes in, right?
Correct.
And there's no outgoing response. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Now at 10:43, there's 2 voice calls. Isn't that right?
Incoming, correct.
Incoming. So people are now calling the phone, right?
Yes,
It's followed up by an incoming text message, right?
correct.
We then now we're almost at 30 minutes later, we have 2 more phone calls coming in, correct?
Correct. Again, that, I believe, is one actual call. They're within a couple seconds.
Understood. Seems to be the same number, 2 seconds off. But nonetheless, someone is calling that phone 30 minutes after those last text messages, right?
That is correct, yes.
And yet, nothing is going out of that phone. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And then we just have tons of passive outgoing data activity, getting us to about 1:20. Isn't that right?
Yes,
And once again, at 1:20, more incoming calls. Isn't that right?
that is correct.
Or it might just be one call, right? Because it's at the same time, same number. Would that be fair?
Yes,
All right. And then we have just a minute and 15 seconds later, another incoming text, right?
correct.
And then there's another incoming text 2 seconds later. Maybe it's from the same place. Who knows? But we've got another record of it. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And then we have an incoming text from a completely different number. Isn't that true?
Correct.
We have got more. So 2 more coming from that number. Isn't that right?
Again, it could be one long message or multiple messages, all incoming.
Right. But the bottom line is people keep reaching out to this phone. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And we're not seeing a response going out from this phone, are we?
Correct.
Now we get to 1:22. There's another incoming text. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And it appears to be a series from this number.
Correct.
Right? There's 3 of them here. We get another incoming text message at 1:26 from a completely different number. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And yet the phone never sends an outgoing message, does it?
Not during this time now.
Then we move on to 2:05. Finally, we have an outgoing text. Isn't that right?
Correct.
So from 8:48 in the morning to 2:05 p.m., on the day that Mr. Dearman is murdered, no outgoing texts are being sent from Robert Tellis' phone. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
And there is not a single outgoing phone call from Mr. Tellis' phone at that time. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
I have no further questions for this witness.
Any redirect?
Thank you. In reference to these messages, we'll keep this up. We don't know if it's actual people concerning this incoming data. It could be spam, correct?
It could be anything without looking at a cell phone extraction that has the copy of the messages or the message being saved through the phone company. It could be anything. We don't know.
Okay, so it would be speculating to say all these people are reaching out, trying to get a hold of this person during this period of time, and he's just not responding. Fair to say?
Again, all we know is that messages are coming into the phone. Some of these are multiple. It could be one longer message broken down. Who they're coming from without checking the numbers and see who that person is, I have no idea.
So again, and you had said multiple times during cross, this could just be a large message. It doesn't mean that multiple times a person's trying to submit or transfer information.
Yeah, text messages are SMS, short message service. They go in small increments, 160 characters. So on your phone, you can type a long letter. When you hit send for transmission purposes, that gets broken down into 160 character segments and transmitted. So on the records, you see multiple messages, but it's actually one long message. So these can be one or they could be multiple.
Okay, so again, to make the characterization, these are multiple times during this time, it's not particularly accurate. It could be one long message, fair to say?
Correct, yes.
And I moved this up courtesy, but I'd like to address
Sure, I can.
the last slide, please.
You want me to do
Yes,
that, Robert?
yes, thank you. Bring this up. Turn your attention to the 2022 media locations, and previously there was a number of questions carrying a longer span of time, 2009 to 2022.
Correct.
This was just to focus your attention on the year in question, fair to say?
Correct, yes.
Your conclusions are the same.
Yes, they are.
There's been no material difference whatsoever between your previous report and this report.
Correct. Just the previous one was a longer time frame with more clutter with data.
And obviously we were interested in an efficient presentation and a more focused presentation, fair to say?
Correct.
Your opinion has not changed whatsoever.
No, it's the same.
Your conclusions have not changed whatsoever.
No, they have not.
There have been several questions concerning this, and I submit to you, it's speculation, you'd be in a better space to sell, but where a person's turning off this media location data and trying to hide their movements. Remember that line of questions?
Yes.
There was questions they could turn their phone off and they could somehow thwart being found or discovered.
Correct.
Fair to say, like they're trying to hide their locations. In this slide, and it's slide 16, this was the last slide that we were addressing for the 2022 media locations. You see in the top left corner, there's the box.
Yes.
If you could explain to us the significance of that box that's in this report.
Yeah, it basically is just telling you that all of the media on the upper left box all occurred in January. So when we narrow it down to 1 year, it's easier to categorize how many locations are for each specific month. So those are all dated in January, and then after January, there are no media locations in that area.
Okay, so again, it appears consistent. It's not like this month of August, we have someone turning off their media locations on their phone. It appears that after January, we have February, March, April, May, June, all the way down, there's zero
Correct.
from that location.
Correct.
Same question concerning the bottom.
Again,
The
that's
bottom
just
box.
yeah.
You-
There was
please
just
explain.
there was just one media location found in September. The other months there was no location found in that area on the phone.
Same question on the right, the middle box right here.
Again,
Middle of the
it's-
screen to the right. Again, if you could please go through the months and explain the significance of that.
Yeah. Again, looking at the media location for the entire year, there was only one media that had location in March in that area. The other months, there was no location whatsoever on the phone.
Again, much to do about nothing. I mean, this shows that apparently the media location part of the cell phone was not being utilized.
Well, media location is when you actually take a photograph. Someone takes a photograph. The phone didn't have any other locations stored on it, such as Google locations or from apps or from any other source whatsoever. So the lack of location, there just wasn't any on the phone. And there are phones that don't store a whole lot of locations.
Okay, so obviously fair to say that based upon your experience in this area, people change their cell phones. People purchase new ones.
Yes, and then each model and each make stores data differently. Some store more locations. It depends what apps you use on your phone. Some will store more locations, others don't. The accuracy of the location can vary tremendously. So there's a lot of issues to take into account.
If I were to tell you that there was evidence, and obviously you weren't called upon to give an opinion concerning that, concerning newspaper articles, concerns in May. Again, looking at this analysis of these three for the media locations, we don't see anything going on in May, do we?
No, we don't.
We don't see anything going on in June, July, August, correct?
Correct.
We do have down here at the lower location, a media location concerning September of 1.
Correct.
Fair to say that based upon your analysis of this phone, there's not a change. It's consistent basically month in to month out, perhaps except for January of 2022.
Yes, it is pretty consistent throughout the year that there's not a whole lot of locations stored on the phone.
And again, the change in the report isn't material. Doesn't concern your conclusions. It's just to make the presentation simpler.
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Any recross?
I do. There's Mark. One more thing. Sir, you remember at the beginning of cross-examination, or redirect examination, you were asked a question about substantively what's going on with those text messages. And I think you said, oh, you might have to speculate. You'd really need to look into Cellebrite and study the messages, correct?
If you want to get the content, whether it's one long message or multiple small messages, yes.
And just to be clear, you did look at the content of the text messages on this phone as part of your work. Isn't that correct?
No, sir. That wasn't one of the items that was requested of me.
Okay. I'm showing opposing counsel, which is marked Exhibit 375. Thank you. May I approach? Sir, do you recognize what I'm about to hand you? This is Station Post 375.
Yes.
Okay. Please take a look at both pages.
Yeah, this is a report that I wrote back on August 17th.
You wrote that. That's a fair and accurate depiction of your report?
It is.
Okay. And you prepared that in conjunction with producing the original PowerPoint presentation that I kind of had and showed you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, we'd ask for admission of State Post 375.
You could approach briefly.
Permission to publish. Oh, quick you over to the Elmo. Thank you so much. Publishing Exhibit 375. All right, sir. So we can see that okay?
Yes.
All right. So that's dated August 17th, correct?
Correct.
And you state in here that you were requested to analyze pen register records, correct?
Correct.
You also compared this IMSI to the IMSI shown on Mr. Tellis' Cellebrite extraction, correct?
Correct.
And you kind of indicate that the phone was associated with, the number we've been talking about, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You were provided a Cellebrite download of Mr. Tellis' phone, isn't that right?
Correct, yes.
You just testified that you did not review the content of any text messages. You did just tell us that on cross-examination, didn't you?
Correct, yes.
I want to show you now page 2. Sir, do you see these 3 entry points here?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that comes from Cellebrite?
Yes, it does.
Doesn't that provide the content of the text messages?
Yes, and in this report, if you read it in its entirety, I'm just trying to confirm the time zone for the pen register, which is the whole reason for the report.
Sir, you said you didn't look at any text messages on the Cellebrite download that had their content. You did testify to that just 2 minutes ago on cross-examination, recross, right?
Yes, I did not review the content of the message. I was looking at the date and time.
Okay. Okay, so you didn't study it, but you literally captured content, correct?
Yes,
And you put it in this email, correct?
in this report, yes.
Okay, and so just to be clear, you had the text messages, the content at your disposal, right, for the day of 9/2, isn't that right?
Yes,
Okay, so I know you say, well, I could be speculating, but the bottom line is, if you had wanted to, you could have just scrolled through and looked to see if it's spam or if it's substantive, isn't that right? You could have, right?
if that had been a request made of me, I would have done it. However, I do work with what I'm requested to do.
I understand that. At this time, we're going to approach the state's proposed 374. May I approach? So I want you to take a look at this for a second. I know that you didn't prepare this, but are you familiar roughly with what you're looking at here, like what this is?
Timeline, yes, from the Cellebrite extraction. Yes, I'm familiar with those. I've seen them many times.
Okay, and I'm going to turn your attention to page 5, entries 12, 13, and 14. Based off of your cover letter that we just looked at, are you familiar with what you're looking at there?
Yeah, those are the three that I copied on my report.
Okay, does this appear to be a timeline extraction from Mr. Tellis's phone?
Correct, yes.
And this appears to be a fair and accurate depiction of data extracted from that phone from that day.
The report looks like a typical timeline report that I've seen. I'm assuming nothing was left out of it, so it appears to be a timeline report.
Okay. At this time, we're going to ask that the state's proposed 374 be admitted.
We could approach, please.
Objection, it's admitted.
So, if I could, I'm going to remove this staple just to make it a little easier to read. Well, I'll just leave it. Well, may I approach for a second? So I want to show you page 2. This first entry point's kind of obscured, but they have categories here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So for example, this appears to be the 4th entry. There's a 4, but the staple seems to be blocking the numbers. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So, if we're looking at this here, this entry here is from, if you could tell us, what time in the morning is that coming from?
1:31, or excuse me, 1:21 and 31 seconds a.m.
And if you look at this category here in the 3rd column, what is it denoting?
Incoming?
And if the 2nd column is telling us what type of data this is?
Yes, it's
And then
email.
For this entry, what is it?
Email.
All right. So let's, whoop, did I just turn that off? Of course I broke the overhead. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Turning to page 5. If you could, just, oh, man, boy, focus this pips. Not having much luck here. Okay. Looking at this entry at the top of the page, if you could tell me, what is the date and time there?
8:47 a.m.
Is this incoming or outgoing?
It looks like an incoming text message.
Okay, and it's categorized as an instant message, is that right?
Yes.
Who is the message from?
Uh,
I don't know if you can read it.
The phone number.
Actually, at this point, I would object. This has been admitted through a different witness. It was admitted absent objection. He was not called upon to read the contents of these. That was covered by law enforcement. So, again, this is out of the scope of the direct. It's been addressed by the state. And it's
I don't know why we're doing a speaking objection. If you'd like to approach, we can. So, at 8:47, who sends Mr. Tellis a text message?
It's from 702-672-8556, and the name on the contacts is Olivia Tellis.
Okay, so that's at 8:47, and the request is what?
The message, what
Yeah.
it says?
Yep.
Can I go to Croquet Club today? It ends around 4.
All right, I'd like to read the next entry. How quickly is there a response? What's the time of the response, sir?
8:48 and 6 seconds a.m.
So the owner of the phone responds, is that correct? Based on this entry. It's from who? Olivia Tellis or the owner?
From the owner of the phone to Olivia Tellis.
And what's the answer?
Okay, go ahead.
So within a minute, the owner of the phone responds, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you could read the next incoming instant message. Is this from Olivia again?
It's from Olivia at 8:48 and 19 seconds a.m.
Okay. And then there's a response, right? All right, thank you, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Now we see there's another incoming email, is that right?
Correct.
At the top of this document, do we see another incoming email?
Correct.
And I'm going to try to maybe zoom out just a little bit to make it a little bit easier. Now we see entry number 17. This is a lot easier to see over here. Entry number 17. There is another incoming instant message, correct?
Correct.
We have, and it appears to be maybe like almost like a spam message or something like that, correct?
I haven't read it, so
Okay.
I can take the time to read it if you like.
It's okay. Looking at entry 18, it's another incoming message. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's from Macy's. Is that right?
So again, I haven't read these, so I can sit down and read them to answer
Okay.
your questions.
Again, I object to his reading the messages. I mean, he was not brought in for that purpose. It was the location.
No, I'm trying to just move it along. I mean, isn't it true it says Macy's on there?
Again, sir, I haven't read them, so I don't know what it says.
Sir,
I
understand,
can take the
but
time to
the
read them
image
if you
is right in
like.
front- I understand that, but the image is right in front of you.
Okay, so would you like me to read it? I haven't
Sure.
read the message.
Go ahead.
Well, number 17, I don't see Macy's on
Sorry,
there.
Sir, it's entry 18.
Oh, I think you were talking about 17.
No, it just says, it appears to be like a Macy's spam text, correct? Like, hey, you get
Yes.
25 to 60% off, right? Something like that. Additionally, entry number 19, there seems to be another incoming instant message, isn't that right?
Yes, they're actually just native messages, not instant messages.
Okay, and I was only basing that off of this column here saying instant message. What's the difference between native message and instant message?
Native messages are when you use your phone's native text message application. Instant messages typically are associated with iPhones, where one iPhone communicates with another iPhone, and the message goes through Apple. For Cellebrite purposes, they bunch them all together under the category instant messages. But again, if you look at the source, it says native messages.
And to be clear, Mr. Tells' phone is a Google Pixel phone, isn't that
Correct.
right? All right. Moving on to page 7. There seems to be a text message incoming from a number. Can you please read out what that number is?
Okay, can you pull
Sure,
it down just a little bit?
I apologize, yeah.
Okay, it's another message incoming.
Okay. It indicates that it's a pending assignment, is that correct?
It says caseworker pending assignments.
Thank
Again, I haven't read the message.
Moving here, there's another, the next one is what, an email that comes in?
An email, correct.
We have another incoming message from 855-712-0964, is that correct?
Correct.
We have another incoming text message from 702-858-1693, is that right?
Correct.
There then is a second message from the exact same number, isn't that right?
I'm sorry, I'm seeing
Entry
one.
number 24 appears to be a second native message from 702-858-1693. Is that correct?
Well, they're dated the same time, so I believe it's the same message we're looking at.
Okay.
There's two
Two
images.
I'll put this, there's 2 entry points on this report, is that right?
Correct.
All right. And then there appears to be a call, is that correct? An incoming call.
Correct. There's an incoming call.
And what is the significance of the 00000?
There was no duration on the call, so someone that called and
Not picked up.
not picked up.
Moving to page 9. Now we're at about 10:49 a.m. Apparently we have an incoming email, is that correct?
Correct.
We have another incoming call, correct, at 11:16.
Yes.
Again, it has the 000, so that means that call wasn't answered, isn't that right?
Not answer correct.
We have another incoming email from Samsung, is that right?
Yes.
That's at 11:30 in the morning?
11:28.
11:28, I'm sorry. Moving on to page 9. Appears to be some type of calendar entry. Moving to entry number 30, there's another incoming email, is that correct?
Correct.
That appears to be coming from Peacock or NBC, would that be fair?
Yes.
Peacock TV, right, isn't that their subscriber, they're like the streaming service. There's a calendar appointment that pops up here, is that right?
Correct.
We have a user account, something regarding Clark County SharePoint, is that right?
Correct.
We have another incoming call coming in at 1:20:29, isn't that right?
Yes.
Is that phone call answered?
Not on the Cellebrite report, no.
Okay. by 1:20, there's another call log at 1:21, is that right?
I can't see that far down.
Understood. Sorry.
Yes, there's the call at 121.
Okay. And there's an instant message that's incoming as well, is that right?
Correct.
And it's at 1:21:50, is that right?
Correct.
Turning to page 11. We have another incoming text message, is that right?
Correct.
As of 1:21:53, we have another incoming text message, is that right?
Correct.
At 1:22:37, we have another incoming text message.
Correct.
At 1:26, we have another incoming text message, is that right?
Correct.
And then at 2:05, we have an outgoing text message, correct?
I can't see the bottom of the
Sorry
page.
about that. We have an outgoing text message at that point, right?
At 2:05, yes.
Okay, and just to be clear, that first text message comes in from that number, 702-325-2821 at 1:26, isn't that correct?
Correct.
And we don't get a response until 2:05 p.m., isn't that right?
Yes.
Responding
Correct.
to that same number, isn't that right?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions from this witness.
I can have that.
Sure.
Mr. O'Gara, there have been a number of questions concerning the events of September 2nd, where the state had asked you that people who kept trying to reach out to Mr. Tellis and that there was no response, correct?
Correct.
Remember the testimony that you had given that these could have been automated? That
Correct.
Could be data texts, things of that nature.
Correct.
That's pretty much confirmed what you had said, has it not?
Yes, a lot of those seem to be junk.
They're junk.
Yes.
Automated junk, fair to say?
Yes.
So again, that he's trying to be reached out and he's not responding because he's supposedly, or the inference is he's doing something nefarious. How often do you respond to junk messages?
I don't. I just put them in the junk folder and delete.
So it's fair to say on the morning and early afternoon of September 2nd, he was receiving a lot of junk messages.
It appears that way, yes.
And he wasn't responding to them, correct?
Correct.
So that's consistent with what your testimony has been.
Yes.
If I could have this brought up. It's currently on the laptop. It's the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint, please. And this will go back to the jury. Again, this just confirms there was a bunch of junk messages they were receiving on that one.
Correct.
Say? You were asked to review the phone contents and the activity to determine a pattern of behavior. Fair to say?
A pattern of locations where the phone is located at various times.
Correct. And the testimony and the data that you've been provided has been consistent with that request.
Correct.
There were a number of questions concerning the gym based upon your review of August at least. There was activity, the location activity, which is what you're testifying today concerning.
Yes.
It's consistent. There were visits to that gym.
Yes, the gym is definitely a location where the phone could have been.
And on September 2nd, 2022, about noon, there was the data that you reviewed was consistent with that phone being in the area.
Correct.
In reference to the media locations, again, we were asked concerning the media locations, the significance of that. There was these inferences that somehow he was turning off his phone to avoid detection. It appears that for the year of 2022, these media locations concerning your analysis of the phone were fairly consistent. I mean, we have
Yes.
a big month in January.
Yes, the media locations are consistent, and as far as the phone being on or off, we have a lot of different records that show activity on the phone through the pen register, the various T-Mobile mediation data sessions, timing events. So when you have activity recorded with tower information, the phone is typically on. So you can have a gap in calls made. It doesn't mean the phone is turned off. That's a big assumption to make.
Okay, in fact, on the lower location, the middle location, we actually have a media location, data location on one in September, correct?
Correct.
The month that this crime is alleged to have occurred, fair to say?
Correct.
Whereas the other months, we don't have anything.
Correct.
And if we were to follow this line of reasoning that this was turned off to hide some activity, that would kind of contradict that idea, wouldn't it?
Yes. With that theory, it was off on the previous months when nothing was going on.
And again, concerning the contents of these messages that we have received, there is nothing that you have reviewed or you're aware of that the actions on this phone, this receipt of these automated messages, was in any way inconsistent with other months. You weren't asked to review that, were you?
No, it was not.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
One brief question based off that last.
Okay. So you remember how he asked you about, let's talk about that theory if the phone is turned off, would these text messages be inconsistent with that? And you had indicated yes, correct?
That is consistent with it being
It'd
off?
be inconsistent.
Inconsistent, correct.
Right. But it would be consistent if you just left your phone at home, right?
Yeah, again, all I testify is where the phone is. I'm not testifying as to who had the phone.
Right. Because if you left your phone on in your house, you could go wherever you needed to go, and no one would be able to track your movements through your phone, correct?
Correct.
And additionally, people could still be trying to reach out to you, right?
In theory, you could, yes.
Right. So picture, messages from your daughter could still show up on your phone. Messages from your wife could still show up, or calls from your wife could still show up on the phone, right?
Correct.
But if you're not at home, you're not able to answer any of those messages, correct?
That would be correct.
And just to be clear, when we look at his phone from 8:48 to 2:05, there's nothing outgoing from Mr. Tellis' phone on the day that Mr. Garriman is murdered. Isn't that correct?
That is correct,
No
yes.
further questions.
Just in response, but the majority of those messages were automated.
Correct.
No further questions. Thank you.
Received a question from a juror. It's been marked as Court's Exhibit number 18. Is there any methods of taking photos with the cell phone that would not show up on a media location map?
Sir, can you repeat that one more time?
Is there any methods of taking photos with a cell phone that would not show up on a media location map?
Yes. Yeah, there definitely is ways. If you turn the location services off on your cell phone, then you can take photographs and no location will be recorded. So the media locations are only active when your location services are turned on.
Any follow-up from the defense? The state?
Yeah, just very briefly. And you're familiar of the term the cloud, right?
Correct.
And you're also familiar with caches, correct?
Correct.
And so you could, for example, take a photograph. I don't know, I'm standing here, but you could take a picture using your camera. Maybe you could delete it, but it could go up into the cloud and it still may be captured, correct?
You can take a photograph and go up to the cloud, store it there, and you can delete it from your phone and still be stored on the cloud.
And it may not, when it's up in the cloud, it may not have, for example, location data. Would that be accurate?
It depends on which cloud service you're using. Some will strip location out of it, some leave it on there.
And sometimes if images get stored in a cache pathway, That also may not have the location information. Would that be fair?
Well, images in a cache file are temporary images. Those will never have location on them.
Okay. So it can be like you took a picture, maybe you could delete that picture, but it was cached, so it's stored away over there. So you're not going to have location information, but at some point that image was in that phone. Would that be fair?
I want to make sure we're talking the same language. When a phone takes an image, takes a photograph, you create one original image, and then you're going to find multiple smaller versions on either a cache file or in other directories of the phone, because the phone will utilize different size images. So only one is an original with latitude, longitude. The others are copies that typically don't have any metadata with regards to location.
Right. So if you found an image in a Cellebrite report, and it says the pathway comes from a cache, you would agree that that's not the original image. That's just a stored away, maybe smaller image that was produced by that phone at some point. Would that be correct?
Yeah, a cache file can be a smaller image of the phone, or it could be if you go on a website, it stores images from a website. So those are all going to cache files.
Good example, like Google Maps, right? If you go to Google Maps, it might cache the images that you're looking at, maybe when you're in Street View. Would that be fair?
When you go on any online service,
So that
it
includes
would
Google Maps?
create cache images. And again, those would not have any location information, would not have date that it was taken. They're just images. Again, if they're from a website, and they're just stored in the temporary cache files.
And a lot of times with those cached images, they may have in Cellebrite an indication that they're modified versus maybe an original image, it might say created. Would that be correct?
No,
Okay.
that created, modified, and accessed have nothing to do with when they were taken.
Okay.
Those dates are only when they're written to the internal memory or when they're looked at in the internal memory. The date that a photograph is taken is stored in the metadata as a date captured.
Okay, so the key is look to see that pathway. If it's cached, you're probably not going to have location services. Is that correct?
On a cache file, you will not.
Thank you.
Just to follow up, Jim. Turning your attention to what's on the screen concerning this media locations app. Again, the questions concerning whether it was on or off. We're making assumptions. Are you able to give any opinion as to whether that was on or off, or there just wasn't use of the media locations aspect of this phone?
No, all we can tell from this is that in January, September, and March, there were images that had locations. Again, the other months, there's none to speculate that it was location services turned off or something else. It's speculation.
It's nothing more, speculation, and there's no indication of any intent based upon the review of the user or the owner based upon your review of this information before you.
No, not based on just this records alone.
Thank you. No further questions.
Anything else for this witness? Mr. Hamner, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Mr. Damon, please step down. You are excused from your subpoena. At this time, we're going to recess for lunch. During this recess, you are admonished not to discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or means of communication, or social media. Read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do any research, consult dictionaries, the internet, or reference materials. Do any investigation, test a theory, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own, or form or express any opinion regarding the case until it's finally submitted to you. And we'll start again at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. All rise to make these adjourned.